Good morning, Nation. John here. Thank you very much for being here this morning, as always. And thank you for hitting the thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. If you're new, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. Welcome to the COVID Revenge Tour. It's not what you think. I feel like when I say that, I ought to have an electric guitar over here, son. But listen, this is not me. Well, it kind of is, but it's not me gloating. It's not me sitting here saying, I told you so. There's a new phenomenon happening across social media and throughout our society. When I saw this the other day on Twitter, I actually thought it was a parody account at first. Did some digging around. No, this is starting to spread. The sentiment is spreading. I'm going to read a little bit of it to you here. This is off of one of the websites in question. They knew. Why didn't the unvaccinated do more to warn us? And of course, they're talking about the whiskey shot. The unvaxxed knew what we didn't. Some of them said too little. Most of them said nothing at all. A lot of blood is now on their hands. Again, I thought this was a parody, folks. I couldn't believe what I was reading. As the world struggles to come to terms with the devastating effects of the whiskey shot, one question that continues to surface is why the unvaxxed didn't do more to warn us about the potential dangers of being injected. While well-intending citizens lined up, did the right thing, and received their whiskey shot, now seeming to do more harm than good, you don't say, their unvaxxed friends stood by and let them do it. Some of them said too little, some said nothing at all, even though they knew what we didn't. Our blood is now on their hands. And that is me reading directly from this website. I will link it down below in case you're interested and you want to go read the rest of it. So, blame shifting 101. Again, once I got past the fact that this wasn't a parody, I said, man, this is a one-off. This is just somebody that's nuts. But when I started to explore it, I found a lot more people that think this way, people that have been messed up by the whiskey shot or the effects of the whiskey shot. And I'm seeing a lot on social media, they should have warned us. And they're talking about us. You know, if you haven't taken one of the whiskey shots, they're saying, you know, people like me should have warned them, and their blood is on my hands. So I said countless times on this channel, I don't trust it. And here's why. I'm not a conspiracy nut job that doesn't believe in vaxes altogether. I think that many of them do work. I think they push way too much on people, but I do think there's a need for them. Here's the thing. When I researched this on my own, I said, you know, what is the average amount of time? Because they always made this parallel back to, you know, other pandemics and other things. And oh, well, there's a booster for this. There's a booster for this. I said, how long did it take to develop something like that? And the average was 10 years plus. This is to create it, to test it, to come back to the lab, to recreate it, fix what was wrong with it, to get it to a point where it was safe and effective for the mainstream. You know, most people are not going to be injured by this thing. 10 years plus. And so I sat back and I said, you know, they're pushing this thing 6 months, 7 months into the pandemic. How could this possibly be safe and effective? You know, and some people would say, well, technology is advanced. Okay, well, I'm not pinning my life and the life of my kids on that statement. You know, and I tried to tell people, do your research. Go in, dig around. I can specifically remember being on this channel saying, do what's best for you, but don't be influenced by me. Don't be influenced by any YouTuber. Don't be influenced by billboards. Don't be influenced by propaganda. I said, find a doctor that you trust. You should already trust your doctor, but if you don't, find a doctor that you trust, then have that conversation. Don't be browbeat into being a lab rat, so to speak. This idea that somehow, some way, folks that did not take a whiskey shot are responsible is ludicrous to me. We tried to tell you. We tried to warn you. I blasted it out on social media. I didn't get banned on YouTube, but I was getting flagged left and right for even talking about the subject, even having a critical conversation about it. Where we sit down, we weigh the pros and cons. That wasn't even allowed. Scientists, virologists, esteemed ones at that, top of their class, they were coming out against this stuff, and they were being silenced on social media. Their accounts were being shut down. Their jobs were being eliminated. They were being silenced. And as this was happening, there was a lot of persecution. Straight up. We were treated like second-class citizens in our own country. You know what's worse than paying $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year in taxes at the end of the year? Paying it while the rest of society is acting like you're not even part of society, and they're just kicking you over to the rubble pile, so to speak. That sucked. That entire feeling sucked. Not being able to go into certain events because I didn't have certain paperwork. Having to watch my wife wonder if she's going to lose her job because she's going to stand her ground on this. Wondering, am I going to have to pull my kids out of school at some point and find a way to homeschool them, somehow make that work? We had to deal with this as well. I watched, people being told to leave certain establishments, even though the science didn't make sense. Come in, wear the mask when you come in for your steak dinner. Sit down in a room filled with 200 people. Take the mask off. Now it's not going to affect you. Eat your steak dinner. Put your mask back on. Line back up at the door like a little lemming. I watched people be persecuted. I watched them be subjected to not being allowed to go into places. I heard horror stories where people would go into like a mainstream hardware store, for example. They would go into a big box place. Lowe's was one that I heard of. They would go in, the door greeters would follow them and say, you have to put one on or you have to leave. Them's the rules. When we complained about the treatment here in the United States, we were hit with, well, it's a private business. You need to leave them alone. Okay, fair enough. But we were trying to tell you. So you can stop with this nonsense where you weren't told, you were willfully ignorant, or you were bullied into it. Because as people were dragged out of pizza parlors in front of their families because they didn't have the proper paperwork, when they were dragged out of malls in front of everyone else because they didn't have the right paperwork, you folks, not you in chat, but I'm saying the people that wrote this website, this blog, whatever, stood by and did nothing. You stood there like a bunch of zombies and you watched it happen, or some of you even cheered it. I remember that. I remember the clapping. Get the unvaxxed out of here. They're filthy. We don't want them around us. You stood by. You did nothing. You stood by and did nothing while the rest of us were blamed multiple times on national TV by President Joe Biden. When he sat there, he pointed the finger right into our face. And he said, the rest of the country is getting tired of you, unvaxxed. You are the reason that we're being held behind in this pandemic. You're the reason that we haven't returned to normal, even though we knew he was lying through his falsies. We knew. We knew, and we were trying to tell everybody else. The science just isn't there. You cannot create and effectively test a 10-year deal in 6 months. Makes no sense. Either you're testing out in the wild to the lemmings that are lining up, you're testing it on them to find out where it's at, or you developed it 10 years before the pandemic. And in neither case did I want to line up and take this because of that. So spare me. Okay, we had to deal with the same threats. Many of us had to deal with the threats of losing jobs, losing homes, losing livelihoods, losing insurance, not being seen by our primary physicians anymore, children not being able to go to school. We dealt with these same threats. We didn't cave. That's the difference. And hopefully that doesn't offend anybody. Look, again, if you made the choice to take this thing and you weren't bullied or swayed one way or another, good for you. I'm not putting you down. I'm just saying I'm not on the hook for it if something went wrong. Okay. So I hope that each and every person that's listening to this made it out of that fiasco okay. I hope this thing did not damage your body in any way, shape, or form. I really do hope that you have no long-term effects. Please understand that. But I hope you also understand that I feel zero guilt either way, because I did everything I could with the platform that I had to try and warn people. And if you come out of this, I don't care if you're in the C19 camp or you're against the whiskey shot, whatever, whichever camp you're in. I hope you come out of this video understanding one thing. This will be tried again. This whole thing where they shamed people and they threw the propaganda up and they tried to, they didn't grab your wrist and force you to take this thing, but they really did try and force you into a corner where you felt like you had no choice. That's fair. A lot of people really were scared that they were going to lose their livelihood, or that they were going to be homeless, or they couldn't get their medication unless they took this thing. That's fair. Okay, but what I need you to understand is that was a scare tactic. They did that to you on purpose. And in the future, I just hope that you remember, you should not be scared or forced into any medical decision, especially by the government, especially 6 months into a pandemic, because that should alert you and let you know something's wrong. A medical decision this big should be something that you choose to do, you walk into willingly and say, please help me. Not the government mandating or forcing it or anything else like that. So please, if you see this stuff on social media, if you see these people blaming the rest of us, well, this thing messed me up, this thing hurt my spouse, this thing whatever, and we were just trying to do the right thing, don't entertain it. This is the only video I'm going to make about it. I know it's a growing movement. I'm going to see more of it, but whatever. If these people need to try and punch down on me and people like me to feel better about the situation they caused themselves, whatever, man. It's no sweat off my back. But again, I'm not losing sleep over it. So there it is. Folks, if you don't believe me, you can go back year and a half ago. You can pull up some of the videos. Now, I had the same message. Stay away from anything that's developed within a 6-month time period and proven to be safe and effective. Folks, this is John with Prepper Nation. Y'all take care. God bless.